Welcome to the Gaudium et Spes podcast, where every other week we bring you Catholic teachings and stories of faith from people throughout the Diocese of Pensacola-Tallahassee. Now, here are your hosts, Suzanne McNinch and Ches Filippini.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Gaudium et Spes podcast. Ches and I are in the studio today, and we've got part one of a two-part series on Catholic schools ministry. So within the Diocese of Pensacola-Tallahassee, with Bishop Wack at the helm, we've got Superintendent Mike Juhas, along with all of the staff, faculty, and students at our schools and learning centers throughout the diocese. If you didn't know, we have 4 early learning centers. We have 7 pre-K through 8th grade, and we have 3 9th through 12th grade schools. So quite a bit, and some really just wonderful faculty and staff at each one of these locations. At all of our schools, we've got 66% of our students that are Catholic. We have 78% of our faculty who are Catholic, and we have a 98% graduation rate. So, Ches, I think those statistics really stand out for me, and I think it just bodes well on what a great job we're doing here in the diocese when it comes to Catholic education.
Yeah, you'll hear it a million times, but it's probably our largest, most visible ministry as a church. Of course, we've done an interview with Matt Nee here in Catholic Charities, very visible public presence, our service to the poor. We have, of course, parish religious education, all these kinds of things, but definitely, and our churches and their sacraments, but our Catholic schools are a national, international brand that everyone knows. Everyone knows Catholic education is, it's always pretty good, you know? And we take pride in our diocese. We have excellent schools, excellent administrators, excellent teachers, so it's great to highlight them over the next 2 episodes.
Absolutely.
Well, cool. Well, it is, it's the beginning of August. We're doing this timely enough because it is back to school time, but we just want to get a sense of where we're at before we head in this episode. So we'll start out with a quote from Gaudium et Spes, which goes, "The joys and the hopes, the griefs and anxieties of the men of this age, especially those who are poor or in any way afflicted, these are the joys and the hopes, the griefs and anxieties of the followers of Christ." So I know, Suzanne, you're not in the back to school in the K through 12 anymore with all those anxieties, but I don't know if you got other anxieties about this time of year.
Certainly. I mean, my kids are still in education institutions,
right, yeah,
so, just at a different level, but I don't get the fun of fighting the crowds at Walmart to get all the school supplies and buying 12 rolls of paper towels to take them in and all that other sort of stuff. But yeah, it's just fun at a different level. What I've really enjoyed over the last couple days, especially being here at the Pastoral Center, is a lot of our staff have brought in their kids.
Oh, yeah?
They're, I think over the last few days, they've had introduction to teachers or freshman orientation and stuff like that. And so it's been really neat to see the kids around here. I know they're excited. I know many of them still haven't finished those book reports that were due.
My daughter, Lucia.
Yeah, so, but, all those kind of fun things and the anticipation of who's going to be in my class and how the school year's going to go and how tough is this teacher really going to be and all those sort of things. So it's just fun. I mean, I love it. I love being in this sort of atmosphere and around it. So
yeah, it's cool. I missed out on this. I was on vacation last week, so I missed out on all the fun around here. Had a great vacation down in Melbourne and also over at Animal Kingdom Lodge with our friends Paul and Sarah. Shout out Paul and Sarah if you're listening. Mary, Matthew, you're awesome kids. But the highlight of the trip was probably my in-laws in Melbourne live on the Indian River, which is the intercoastal waterway. So you get all kinds of weird stuff in a part brackish, part salt, part freshwater estuary, I think it is, a lagoon. We used to learn about this. It was like drilled into our heads as Melbourne kids. But one of those things is sharks are running around everywhere, and especially little bull sharks. They come right up to the shoreline, to docks and stuff like that. So I was out there with my son and my daughter, Lucia, John Paul and Lucia, had the cast net, didn't even have a rod and a reel, but these bull sharks just kept going around. Little guys, maybe 1.5 2 feet long, but I was like, I'm going to get that one. And we kept trying and trying and trying. I landed one like dead center on top of this shark's head, just escaped out underneath, and we were getting too hot and sweaty. We were going to go up, and I was like, one more toss. That guy came back, and he just looped around. I threw it. I just yanked real quick, and sure enough, I had a little bull shark.
Oh, my gosh.
And John Paul freaked out and with delight, and Lucia freaked out with terror. She just screamed, "It's gonna eat me!" And I was like, "Get up the stairs." We got it, plopped it down. We had a little moment of, are we gonna let this thing die and then eat it later? But we decided to, maybe for better or for worse, I don't know. For the future swimmers in the Indian River, we let the thing go back in the lagoon. So hopefully it doesn't grow up too big, but just the fun and excitement. Disney was great, but it's crazy how a simple moment like that was probably the highlight of our vacation.
Yeah.
So it had a good time. Definitely good
that's
time.
wonderful. Good
Thanks,
deal.
Mary and Randy, my in-laws. Thanks for hosting us. Well, anyhow, it is time to jump into part one, as we said in this two-part series. And Bishop Wack is just going to kind of detail his experience as a bishop leading Catholic schools, but also his experience as a young man in Catholic schools, his experience as a pastor in Austin, Texas, and just all the experiences and the value he's seen in this Catholic ministry of education. So we'll see you on the other side.
Hello, today I'll be talking about Catholic school ministry. It's a timely subject anytime, but especially now at the time of this recording, it's back to school time. Back to school. Those were three very terrifying words when I was young. No, not terrifying, but they did scare me a little bit because that meant the end of summer. But this is the time. This is back to school for us and for a lot of our children and families. So I want to talk about Catholic school ministry. It's a very important part of our diocese, our parishes, our universal church. But before we talk about our Catholic schools or any school, we need to remember where all this comes from. And I mean education and formation. It really, for us Christians, it comes from Jesus Christ himself, the Great Commission in Matthew chapter 28, the end of Matthew's Gospel. Right as before Jesus is taken up in the ascension, he blesses the apostles and he says, "Full authority has been given to me, I give it to you. Go therefore and teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit." So there, Jesus said, I think the apostles probably, they were, in their minds, this was the end. Jesus was going to bring all things together. After his resurrection, now it was going to be the end, perhaps, of our time on earth, and we would be united to heaven and all of that. But really, Jesus showed them that this is just the beginning, that yes, he was being taken into heaven and will come again. But until then, he said, go teach all nations, baptize them, tell them about the good news, teach them the gospel. This is the vocation, the calling of every single person, all of us. When we are baptized, especially, we are baptized into this mission to be like Christ in the world, to go and teach and baptize and help form people in the gospel of love, the gospel of joy. And so really, it all kind of comes back to that. And this is the beginning of the church, the mission of the body of Christ here on earth. Teach all nations, Jesus said. Basically, evangelize. Tell them about the gospel. Teach them the good news. This reminds me of something I touched on in one of these episodes a year ago, and that is Pope St. Paul VI, famous saying, "The church exists to evangelize. That is why we're here, to teach, to evangelize, to share the good news." It's who we are. It's not just what we do. It is why we are, why we exist as a church. It's true. We exist also to worship and adore God. We serve our brothers and sisters and thus serve the Lord. Yes, we build and maintain church buildings and school buildings and other structures. But before all else, and in the midst of all else, we must share the gospel with the world. So again, it comes all the way back to Jesus' great commission in Matthew 28. Go therefore, teach all nations. This education or formation happens first of all in our families. At the baptism of their child, parents are reminded that they are the first teachers in the ways of the faith for their child. It's actually part of the instruction when a couple brings a child to be baptized. In our tradition, we say that to them. We say, remember, you are the first teachers in the faith for your child. And how can they do that? They do that in many ways, in many age-appropriate ways. When they're little, perhaps, certainly to take them to church, to pray with them, to sing them songs from church, the babies and the little ones, to do drawings, of maybe, God's love and people helping each other and all of that, or just love of creation, things like that. I know another thing that's really important is parents can and do put images around the house. For me growing up in my house, there were a lot of crosses, crucifixes, images of Mary and the saints and the Sacred Heart of Jesus, for instance, around the house. And they didn't have to say a lot, but they just kind of surrounded us with these images, and it really had an impact on me. I remember when we were really little, we had a children's illustrated Bible. And even before I could read, I loved to look at the pictures there. And that's kind of how I learned about creation and the flood, the sacrifice of Isaac, the prophets, David, the Good Shepherd, Jesus, his death, his resurrection, things like that in a children's Bible. That's just a great way to teach the faith. And again, parents, you don't have to be theologians or philosophers, PhD, persons in your field in order to teach the faith. You don't have to be an expert in Scripture, but you just have to live your faith and pass it on to your children. You are the first teachers of your child in the ways of the faith. And of course, taking them to church, that's important. People ask me all the time when is a good age to do that? Do you take them as babies or when they're really little and they might be distracting? Well, that's up to you. I think my parents always did that. And if we got fussy, they would take us out or something like that. But it was a non-negotiable in my home growing up where you went to church as a family every Sunday. And again, we didn't talk about it a lot. It just happened, and that's how we all were formed in the faith as well. And then, of course, helping to prepare them to receive the sacraments. A lot of people, I think, they have this maybe a mistaken notion that they would just drop off their children at church on Sundays or Wednesdays whenever they have religious education, and the people there could help to form them for First Confession or First Communion or Confirmation. And to be true, thankfully, we have catechists who do that or who can do that. But everything we do at church really should assist the parents in being those first educators in the faith for their children. They know them best. They're with them the most. So we hope what we do, we hope to kind of just really augment that or assist them. Again, my parents did this, I think, very well. I'm very grateful to them for teaching me the ways of the faith just by praying with all of us daily. We all said the rosary every day after dinner together, by taking us to church, preparing us for the sacraments, and surrounding us with images of the saints and Jesus and Mary. Marian altar during the month of May, the month of Mary. There were just many ways in which they did that, and I'm really pleased about that. So in our schools, we do the same thing. We try to surround our children, our students, with those great images of the saints, Mary, Jesus, the crucifixes, beauty, art, just really trying to show them what it means. In fact, I was just at one of our high schools, John Paul II High School in Tallahassee yesterday, and I saw once again, I forgot about this, but in the hallway they have quotes from Pope St. John Paul II and other saints there, just really calling the students to greatness, to being great, being people of virtue and value. Of course, the famous one from Pope St. John Paul II in bold letters in the hallway. It says, "Be not afraid. Have courage to go into the deep with the Lord. There you will find him." Just to see that. I don't know how many students, stop in the hall and read these, and everything, but that they know that they're there, and subtly or maybe directly even it works on them. So I think that's one big way we can pass on the faith, is just simply to surround our children, our young people, with images and beauty and things like that, so that it can kind of lift their minds as well, and they can come to know the Lord. Our parishes, that is our churches, are collections of families. And so I said that, education starts at home in the family. And so our parishes then, as a family of families, really assists those families in educating and forming their children. And we do that, as I said, we have religious education, we have catechesis of the Good Shepherd in many of our parishes. We have youth ministry programs and retreats, adult education, Bible study, masses, homilies, sermons, topical talks, things like that. And so, yes, it starts in the family, but really the parish, the family of families, that's where we hope to try to, I guess, assist parents and also to confirm what they are teaching to their children. Catholic schools. Now I'm getting to Catholic schools. All that was just an introduction. Catholic schools are special places of formation and instruction and education for our children. Now, at one point, and I mean, probably, after the Second World War, in those days when we were rebuilding, and there was a time of tremendous growth in the West, especially in the United States. There was a goal. I don't know if it was explicitly stated, but it was hoped that every church, every parish could have a school, and to help to educate those parishioners. Now, I don't know what level we reached, if it ever got even close to half of all parishes. I don't know if it ever did, but certainly there were a lot of schools then. The parishes we had so many not lay teachers, but we had sisters and religious brothers to come and open and teach in our schools. There were a lot of those. Now, not so much. We don't have the sisters in great numbers like we did then, or religious men, brothers, or priests. We're blessed to have dedicated lay people who teach in our schools. And I would say, I guess I don't want to say a number, how many we have or what percentage, but certainly we know that that's not tenable. There's no way we could have one school for every parish, nor maybe is that even necessary. For instance, in this diocese, we have 50 parishes and we have 9 schools. So, what is that? Anyway, so a fifth or something like that, a little bit less than that, in our schools. But it's certainly in those days after the Second World War, we were really hoping to have a school in every parish because we really, really wanted to educate and help, especially our own. And by what I mean by that is this, that leading up to that time and including that time right after the war, Catholics were still largely immigrants to this country. I guess I should say that the large groups of immigrants who came, especially from Italy and Germany and Poland and other places, were largely Catholic. And it was hard for them to kind of make it in the public school system because of language and culture. And so that was one reason why we wanted to open up schools. Maybe they were schools taught in Polish or German or Italian, but we opened many of them to take care of our own, like that. But more and more, and especially now, it's not just taking care of our own, but we realize that our ministry is for the world. It's for anyone, Catholic or not Catholic. Yes, of course, they're going to be taught our Catholic teachings, our catechism, our values and virtues. But at the same time, it really is open for everybody. And it's a way for us to evangelize and to proclaim the gospel as Jesus told us to do. And of course, in our schools, we teach math, history, the sciences, the arts, humanities, things like that. We do that, I think, very well. But at the same time, and perhaps even more importantly, we hope to teach or instill virtues, values, the corporal and spiritual works of mercy, compassion, love, awe, and wonder at God's goodness and grandeur, and love for our brothers and sisters. The founder of the Congregation of Holy Cross, that is the religious congregation of which I am a member, is Blessed Basil Moreau. He was a teacher, and he really wanted to bring together, especially priests and brothers, who would revitalize the French church and the schools there, because they were devastated after the French Revolution, literally devastated and torn down. And he and many other people were really trying to revitalize those systems. So Blessed Moreau talked a lot about teachers and education. Perhaps his most famous quote is this: "The mind will not be cultivated at the expense of the heart." The mind will not be cultivated at the expense of the heart. What does that mean? Turn that around, and he's basically saying, as some people kind of have translated it, we educate both the mind and the heart. So sciences, the humanities, history, mathematics, educating the mind. That's good. But he said side by side with that is forming the heart, cultivating the heart, that is virtues and values and love and beauty and all of that. So I like that. He also said the best thing a teacher can do is form citizens for heaven. And he said the world has a greater need for people of values than it has for scholars, which I think is another really great quote. The world has a greater need for people of values than it has for scholars. So really that's our mission. Yes, of course it is to open the mind and teach the sciences and the truths that we know in the natural world, but also, and perhaps more importantly, to point people toward God, toward the gospel, toward loving and serving the Lord and one another. And so there are many ways that we do that in our schools, that we cultivate the heart, that we lift, educate people and lift up their minds to the Lord. In a school, in a Catholic school, in our Catholic schools, we have opportunities for the students to celebrate Mass, to attend Mass weekly, an all-school Mass or Masses for their grades, or maybe a primary school Mass, middle school Mass, high school Mass, things like that. But regular opportunities for our students to celebrate their faith and celebrate the various seasons of the church. Ash Wednesday, or getting a cross on their foreheads. Palm Sunday, which, of course, school is in session on Sundays, but nonetheless to talk about that. Holy Week, Christmas, Advent, things like that, and the Saints' Days. When it's a certain Saints' Days or a day of a Marian feast day, then they can talk about that. What does that mean? Why do we believe that? How does that lead us closer to God, etc.? We also offer opportunities for students to go to confession, typically during Lent and Advent, preparations for Easter and Christmas, respectively, but could be throughout the year. In May, there is the May crowning, a time when we talk about Mary's unique role in salvation history and honor her as the Mother of God and the Mother of Jesus Christ as well. Mother of Jesus, the human, Mother of Jesus, who is God as well. We have adoration. And we also teach students and help them to learn how to lead some of these services, how to pray with their classmates. And that just looking back for me, that was really important. I was always shy. I didn't want to speak in front of people, but I, for some reason, and maybe now looking back, it's because God was planting this in my heart of a vocation, but I felt comfortable, reading at Mass with my classmates, or leading a prayer service or something like that, even as a little kid, not totally comfortable. I was still extremely nervous, but that was much better than getting up and giving a presentation on George Washington. I didn't have the confidence there. I was terrified to do something like that. But I think it's just because of my parents prayed with me at home, because they surrounded us with, images and just things of beauty, things of faith, that it was a natural thing for me to do. And so that's another thing that we can do for our students, is teach them to pray, teach them to be leaders, teach them to teach others, to evangelize others. It's a great story from the school in Texas where I served as pastor. We had a pre-K through 8th grade school there at St. Ignatius Martyr in Austin, Texas. And I remember hearing these parents who were friends of a kindergartner. And in kindergarten, they were talking about the rosary. And so they all prayed a decade of the rosary, just 10 Hail Marys, and with these little kids, they all passed out these little rosaries, and they taught the kids how to pray that, and they were doing that. And the teacher said, and now your homework is to pray a decade of the rosary with your family tonight. And so this mother told me this. She said, our little daughter, Grace, came home and she told us this is what we're going to do. And so, we got out our rosaries, and she said, granted, I had to find them. They were kind of dusty, and I hadn't used one in a while, but she said we got out our rosaries, and the little girl was looking at her parents, and they were looking at her, and the parents realized they didn't know exactly how to start this or how to pray the rosary. And so here's this little kindergartner. She rolled her little eyes and she said, "Fine, I'll lead." And she led the family in praying that decade of the rosary. The mother told me that to her embarrassment, but she thought she also told me how proud she was that that's what her daughter was learning in the school. Not just how to pray, but to be confident enough to lead prayer, to lead her parents, to show them how to pray. I love that story. I think that's just a really neat story as well, of what we try to do, what we want to do in our schools. Not just teach them the faith, but teach them to evangelize, teach them to lead prayer. I thought of another little story here. So one of the pleasures of my life is celebrating Mass with our little ones, with those little kids at school, our school Masses especially. I like to do that, of course, for the graduate students and the undergrads at UWF or FSU. And I love to do that with our high school students as well at Catholic or John Paul II High School. But especially for our little ones, at our grade schools, I love to do that. And here's something that I've done in almost every school, it seems. I did this in Texas a lot, and I've done that here. But for the homily, it's a little more, I guess, informal. It's still Mass, but you have all the kids there. It's an all-school Mass. So I like to ask them questions. And one of the things that I do is I like to talk to them about superheroes. And I say, all right, let's talk about superheroes. Yay, name some superheroes. And they go on and on, Spider-Man, Superman, Wonder Woman, all this. And one of the little kids, actually, after they were naming all of them, one little kid in the back raised her hand. I went all the way back with a microphone and put it in her face. I said, yes. And she said, Deadpool. And I said, oh my gosh, I don't know how you know that. No, forget that. But anyway, I digress. But they're naming all of these superheroes. And I said, okay, now what can they do? Let's name their superpowers. And raising their hands. Spider-Man can crawl up a building, and catch thieves with web, and Superman can do this, and X-ray vision, and Wonder Woman, I don't know, she has an invisible jet. I'm sure she does other things too. But they're naming all these things and everything. And I said, now, and this is what I was building up to this, I said, and now who is the greatest superhero ever? And the kids all said in one voice, Jesus, or at one place, God, Jesus, so they get it. And that's great. And I said, so what is God's greatest superpower? He can do anything. I kind of wanted to lead them into this trap. Like he could crush the world between his fingers, or, he could lift the whole universe with just a pinky or something like that. But this is every single time I've done this, it's the first person who raises her or his hand. I go up to them and they get it basically right. They say, he forgives us when we sin, which is an amazing thing to hear from a third grader, Here we have St. Augustine, St. Thomas Aquinas, and the great theologians of our time, the great thinkers of all time. They came up with this. And in the Book of Wisdom, it says that. It says, you, Lord, you relent and you forgive your people, even when they sin. Thus you show your power. So these little kids get it, and it's fantastic. But that's the right answer. God's greatest power, if you will, is that he forgives us. He has patience. He gives us another chance and another chance and another chance. And to hear a little third grader just say that in their sweet voice, he forgives us when we sin. I mean, that's what we hope to do always for all of our children in public schools, homeschooling, and in our Catholic schools and charter schools. We hope to instill that faith in our children. And so it's so edifying to me when that happens and kids get it. Or I'll go into an 8th grade and start asking them questions, not just, who's God and all of that, but I'll ask them more specific questions to name the books of the Bible, or what are the 4 Gospels of the Bible, or what are the 7 corporal works of mercy? What are the gifts of the Holy Spirit? Things like that. I think we should expect our kids at age-appropriate levels to know things like that and to be able to articulate our faith and our beliefs, and the scriptures and things like that. And again, that's very edifying to me as well, to ask those questions. And also, just by attending our Catholic schools, parents show the importance of Catholic faith. They're living their faith as well, because it's a sacrifice for them to send their child or children to our schools. Yes, we do have assistance from the state government here, It's not exactly vouchers in Florida, but it's Step Up for students. So they have money coming now this year. Everyone who needs it or wants it can have that. Nearly everyone can receive that funding. So that's great. But they pay a lot of their own money. They have to buy the uniforms for their kids. They are in charge of the transportation for their children. We don't have buses. We don't have access to the buses of the county or the school system, things like that. We need things for basketball uniforms. We need funds for those. We need funds for all kinds of things, for books. And so we always have fund drives and, little things we try to raise money all the time from parents. And sometimes they say, you're nickeling and diming us. Well, it's true. That's because we don't have an infusion of millions of dollars from the state to run our schools. It's just us. And so by bringing their child or children to our schools, that's an act of faith, saying, we're in this with other families as well. We want to build up our community in this way. We also hope and expect that our parents, our families are involved in our schools, not just that they drop them off, their children, and then go about their work and then pick them up, but that they can serve as volunteers. A lot of times it's a requirement in our schools that they would have to, serve a certain number of hours, maybe helping at the refreshment stand or whatever, at a sporting event or something like that, or in the library or in the front office, something like that. But that's another way to bring them to the school, to kind of bring the community together as well. We hope that there is a family atmosphere in our schools that, again, because it is not just, we don't just entrust them to, a group of people whom we don't know, but it's the community coming together to support and assist each other in the education of our children and the formation of our children. And thus, it is a microcosm of the whole church. That's what we're called to do, to come together, to assist one another, to worship the Lord together, to serve one another, and thus grow in holiness together. Another thing that's important about our Catholic schools is our teachers. As I said in the earlier days, especially in this country, almost all the teachers were religious women and men. That is to say, they were sisters or religious brothers or priests. But now there are very few religious teaching in our schools. It's mostly lay people, dedicated lay people. And I say dedicated because, well, they are, but they're also there. You can't say they're there for the money because in most situations, it's not a secret. They could make a good amount more of money in the public schools because it is funded by the government, by the state, and they have more means to do that. So it's a sacrifice for them to come and teach in our schools. And yet we're so blessed to have so many wonderful, good, talented, great teachers in our schools. Our teachers are expected to grow in the faith as well. Now, that doesn't mean that they all have to be Catholic. Certainly, if someone is going to teach religion, then, or one is involved in the preparation of the sacraments for children or something like that, or a campus minister, she or he should be Catholic. But, there's no indication that says that the one who teaches art or math has to be Catholic. However, they have to know of our faith. They have to agree to abide by the norms in our school, in our church. And then they also have to be certified as a Catholic school teacher. So they will take classes on the faith. They will go to Mass with their children. Again, we're not trying to force anyone to become Catholic, but we certainly want to share the beauty of our faith with them. And some then do end up converting and becoming Catholic. Many don't, but we want them to be, to help to evangelize as well, our children, and to teach according to Jesus Christ. And so there we have various formation days that, again, are not just geared toward helping them to be effective teachers or have effective class management skills, but also, some formation on the church, on the seasons of the church and how they can pass that on. So our schools also can and should serve. I mentioned that it's not just Catholics who come to our schools, but they can serve others as well, especially those who maybe would not have the chance to get that attention that we can give them in a smaller school, a smaller classroom, maybe the poor and the underserved, by offering scholarships. or just help being in neighborhoods where it's hard for them to go to school, and welcoming other people to come into our school who may not be parishioners or even from our faith, but can grow in the faith as well. So in that way, I think we do a great service to the community as well. Sports and clubs are an important way for us to live our faith. Again, we try to educate and form the whole child, not just the mind, but the heart and the body as well. And so we put a great emphasis, as do most schools, on physical education, on gym, on just exercise, and on sports as well. And so, but again, it's not just we have a football team, we want to be the best, we want to win everything. It's to help people to learn to compete, to build up friendships, to learn new skills, things like that. It's very interesting. There's a program that's coming out of the University of Notre Dame, my alma mater. It's called Play Like a Champion, and it comes from that's what the football players, they hit this sign when they go out of the locker room, play like a champion, and they all, go out there. Well, this is now a kind of a national movement, play like a champion, and our schools participate in that. We send some our coaches and athletic directors to these seminars, and basically they talk about what does it mean to have sporting events or teams or clubs, at our Catholic schools. And there's a very interesting statistic. Every year they ask parents and students to list their top 10 reasons for playing volleyball, football, soccer, whatever it is, baseball, softball. What are your top 10 reasons, or what are your top 10 reasons for having your child play these sports? And it's really interesting and very telling. For the adults, the parents, number one or number two is to win, and then to compete. To be the best they can be, and things like that. And then whatever, it tapers off after that. But for the children, even the high school children, students, number one, number two, usually that to win is about number 5 or number 6. The top ones usually have to do with competing or making new friends. Having fun, that's a big one for the kids. Whereas adults put that maybe down at number 10 or something like that, So it kind of reminds the adults that we're driven to win and compete and be the best. But especially our little ones, they want to have fun. They want to get better. They want to hit the ball farther or something like that. They want to make friends. They want to be with their friends, So it's just, that's another way that we can remind people it's not just all about beating your opponent and winning. It's about coming together as God's beloved children to have fun and make friends and build up those friendships. The mission of our schools is to teach others the gospel, to form them in Jesus Christ, to point them toward the kingdom of heaven. And this is not just for our schools. This is for our parishes, our ministries. Everything that we're about should be dedicated to that, to forming one another in the ways of the faith. And as Blessed Basil said, to prepare people to be citizens of heaven. Specifically, I want to read the mission for our Pensacola-Tallahassee Diocese for the Office of Catholic Schools. This is their mission statement. And I think it says pretty much what I just said, but better. And it's more terse. Filled with faith, hope, and love, the Diocese of Pensacola-Tallahassee's Catholic schools and early learning centers seek to glorify God by challenging and supporting students as they strive to become joyful scholars and saints through a rigorous academic curriculum, as well as complete immersion in the Catholic pursuit of truth, goodness, and beauty. I like that a lot. I hope that's in every classroom. I know it's on our webpage and everything, but I think that really covers everything. And so that's on our webpage if you want to look that up. But it's a beautiful mission statement. It's something that we all aspire to live up to accomplish in our schools, in our parishes, in our students and families. Our schools serve our families. Our schools are families of families. That's what our parish is. They serve our church and our society by offering to be and hoping to be a beacon of education, formation, hope, and faith, and love. May God bless our Catholic schools here in our diocese, our home schools as well, our students in public schools and charter schools so that they can come to know the Lord and grow in holiness and truly one day be citizens of heaven.
Hello and welcome back. You know, Ches, I think the one statistic that the bishop talked about that was sort of a surprise to me was the fact that following World War II, you know, there was a drive to have a school at every parish across the U.S. That kind of seems unsurmountable at the time. But, you know, we do have quite a few Catholic schools across the nation, don't we?
We do, yeah. So this prompted me, as Bishop was talking, I was like, that's really interesting, to just look up. There's a great website called the Center for the Applied Research of the Apostolate, which is run out of Georgetown University. Basically, a group of, I think, priests and lay people collect statistics on the national church. And you get a picture of what the national church is doing in a whole number of ranges, but specifically on education. As of 2022, there's about 5,900 total K through 12 Catholic schools, and that's I think there's about 16,500 parishes. So we're probably at that 1 to 3.5. One school for every 3.5. Then that's combined K through high schools and secondary schools. To get a sense though how close we got back in 1970, again I mentioned 5,900 today total schools. There were 11,352 total K through 12 schools back in 1970. So they got close as far, but of course attrition over time and just a whole bunch of dynamics. The cost of education for private education just is a drastic difference from in that 50-year span. So, and I think totally right now there's about 1.7 million kids in Catholic schools. Back then it was 4.4 million. So just a lot bigger percentage, still a sizable chunk. But we're on the tail end of maybe that kind of, not that we're, declining, but like the growth has kind of stalled as far as the numbers, but that does not detract from the quality of what we're offering.
No, absolutely not. I think it was interesting when the bishop did talk about the fact that, I think the world has a greater need for people of values than scholars. And so it got me kind of doing what you did, looking up a little statistics, and I found from the University of Notre Dame that in recent research it was reported that private school graduates are significantly more likely to actively participate in civic activities than their public school counterparts. Specifically, activities like voting, volunteering, donating to charity, not just for tax write-off purposes, but out of a sense of requirement of justice. And so I think that really says a lot to our parents, our other church, family members and our teachers that are instilling, these good values in our kids that are going and pursuing a Catholic education.
Yeah, and something that Bishop mentioned is the commitment level from a financial perspective of parents. When I was a Catholic teacher and was a Catholic student, it was very clearly, in everyone's back of their mind, it wasn't every day like, don't forget your parents spend a lot of money on you. But it was always there. It's like, this is a choice, So like that engagement that you see in life, I think reflects the fact that like every family that's committing to this is there's a free option.
Right.
It's right down the road usually, and there's this like, we're committing to this in finances and time and driving and all sorts of things. So you make the most of it, and you tend to take, I think, a greater sense of ownership about maybe your life, your vocation as a result of that, perhaps?
Yeah, absolutely. And our teachers, too, I mean, they're not making a ton of money as Catholic teachers either. So for them, it is a sacrifice, too. And whether it's a vocation that they've had for their life or if it's a second, career that many of them are embarking upon. But, I just thank them for wanting to do this and understanding the value then that it presents to our kids that are going through the school.
Yeah, agreed. I enjoyed talking about value and what's kind of given to our kids. Bishop talking about his shyness when he was a boy and just like not really wanting to be the presenter but through the school, not just doing academic projects, but also incorporating kids in the liturgy and leading prayer and stuff like that. That elicited in him a different side that he was not kind of aware of, and that his parents also helped him along, which, I mean, would Bishop have been Bishop if he went to public school? I don't know. Maybe not. But you get a sense there of like, wow, the value added in just like again, that ownership idea, like requiring kids, like you got to lead the rosary with your family. You got to be an evangelist to your friends and your family. Through what we give you here at school, it made an impact on his life, which for us here in the diocese has been, exponentially, more significant than any person at his school could have ever thought. The fact that he's our bishop, he is who he is, he's allowed to share his gifts in this way, I thought was a very, very powerful way of presenting. What are you given in Catholic education? What opportunities that you might not get elsewhere? So I love that story. It was really cool.
Me too. So, and our schools do go to weekly mass, and that mass is open to everyone. So it's not just confined to the school people. So if you'd like to attend a mass where there's a school adjoined to them, please look that up and get there, because it's quite interesting to be around all those kids at mass. It is fun.
Especially watching a kindergartner teacher try and take all their kids up, who are all below the age receiving Holy Communion, but they all go up for a blessing, at least at Sacred Heart. It's a very funny experience. Funny is the wrong word, but it's enjoyable to watch from the back as a parent.
It is, and it's very uplifting too, and it makes you hopeful for the future.
I agree.
Seeing all those kids there. So.
Totally agree.
Yep.
Well, it's a great mission for our diocese, guys. Again, under the leadership of Bishop Mike Juhas, we have an incredible team of people who are leading us. Please support them with your prayers. And as we talked about, and we'll get within our next episode with Principal Rogers from St. Mary's, there's an incredible opportunity if you're not at a Catholic school already and you think the financial hardship is maybe a bridge too far. The state of Florida has given us this amazing new available to everyone, regardless of income levels or something like that. Here is your credit, and so the door's open. Please call your local Catholic school. We'd love to have you, and spread the word. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for tuning in today to the Gaudium et Spes podcast. If you would like to know more about our podcast, please visit gaudiumetspes.net or go to ptdiocese.org and click the button that says podcast. If you listen to the audio version from an app such as iTunes, Stitcher, or Spotify, be sure and rate, review, and comment. If you watched us on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe or leave us a comment there as well. Thank you for joining us.